Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening for our demonstration of two platforms, specifically the jeremyanderson.com website, which is for our district, District 110, and its constituents, as well as the legislature.ms.gov site. So we'll do a demonstration of the jeremyanderson.com site to start off with, and then we'll branch into the legislature.ms.gov site. If you have any questions, please feel free to comment those questions onto your platform, whichever platform you've chosen to view our stream via Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube. So if you want to follow along with us, the website is listed in the ticker below. JeremyAnderson.com is the first site we're going to start off with. I'll take a moment to allow everyone to get to that, and then we'll get started. Okay, this is our JeremyAnderson.com site. This is where you're able to find a lot of information about the current legislative session, as well as legislative sessions prior. In addition to that, you're also able to submit constituent service requests, meeting requests, as well as following the schedule, which we try our best to keep updated with what's going on around the Capitol, whether it's committee meetings or whether it is the time in which the House will convene. Sometimes you'll find some Senate items there as well. So we'll click public schedule. The public schedule just kind of gives a basic overview of what's going on. Of course, we started session last Tuesday, so we haven't really kicked off much just yet, but we do have some convening times for session that are listed here. And again, if you're just tuning in, please visit jeremyanderson.com to follow us or just view from the platform of your choosing. But we do have some information here. You're able to click and get information on the Capitol. We will add the link to the live stream that will be added to here as well. Again, when committee meetings are streamed live, that information will be listed under the committee meeting date as well. The next important part of this site is the publications. This is a new part of our site that we kind of launched last year in an effort to be more transparent with our constituents. We launched publications and public briefings. This is where you'll find all of the briefings, whether it's public meetings that we attended, or if it's information that we have received in our office that we felt was important for the community to see. As you can see here, we've got information through a government efficiency and accountability briefing, which is a briefing we put together last year or the year before about some recommendations to improve government transparency in our state. And then, of course, we have some briefings on the COVID CARES Act, which is something we also put together to help our community and our constituents better understand our interpretation of how the CARES Act dollars would be spent. And then we have some important PowerPoints and webinar information for small businesses that was also launched on last year. Below that, we have public letters. These are letters that we sent to mayors and supervisors within our community on various issues that we felt were important. And then, of course, proclamations, any proclamations that we launched, you're able to find those there. The next important part of our site is the constituent service request. This is where constituents can go and complete a service request form to get assistance with their site. With their issue, whether it is working with a state agency or whether it is just needing some information in general about state services and what the state can do to help in any number of issues. This is also a request for kind of companionship if we're working with an individual or a nonprofit and they need some help working across state agencies. We can kind of be a vehicle to help expedite some of the services or resources for constituents. The next thing is the meeting request. This is very important as well. If you need to schedule a meeting with somebody to discuss an issue or a potential piece of legislation that you are interested in, that is where you'll go to request a meeting. And we can schedule a meeting to hear some of the things that may be of importance to you. Underneath that are just some information. We have our latest articles. This is just important information about what we're doing here at the Capitol, whether it's a statement on a hot issue that we voted in favor or against, whether it is just in the news in general or very important information that we felt needed to be out to our community. Underneath that is our social media feed. And then down here underneath that, you'll find the most important part here is the state data. This links to the state statistical data site where you're able to see all of that information. And then, of course, under here is how you get in contact with our office. Here in the menu option, we have, of course, the bio, legislative team to help facilitate constituent service requests. Dr. Ruffin is our chief of staff. Paul Hampton is our press secretary. And then Mr. Clinton and Mr. Flores is our policy assistants, and they're able to help research and interpret bills for us as well. So their contact information is listed below. They're here to help in any way that they can as well. We've already gone over public scheduled publications. Press Corner is similar to what you saw on the homepage. That is kind of broken out more in detail on this page. You can kind of filter between press releases, statements in the state news and in national news. And then the 2022 session, we'll go over that on the legislature.ms.gov site. This is where you'll actually go to find the most current pieces of legislation that our office has drafted. And so we'll go over that briefly in a moment. And then the previous legislation is any legislation that we have proposed previously that you can go back and kind of look through and see how it traveled through the process and what was the end result of that. The Capitol is a direct link to the legislature.ms.gov site. So if you forget that link, you can always come here and click the Capitol and it'll take you right there. Our state government takes you to the Mississippi State Government website, which is where you'll find that data that we talked about on the homepage as well. Watch Live is where you can go to see the most recent and current live session of the House. The Senate can be found in a different location, but this is where you can go to find the House live stream. And of course, speaker request, if you are requesting for myself or someone from our office to come and speak at anything, this is where you go to submit that. And then contact, of course, links you down to the bottom. So that is our jeremyanderson.com site. Remember, if you have any questions, feel free to comment those questions in your preferred platform that you're viewing this demonstration on. So the next thing we want to jump to is the legislature.ms.gov site. So let's head over to that. So this is the legislature.ms.gov site. This is the official site for the Mississippi Legislature. And there's a lot that you can actually do on this site if you know how to get to it. So a lot of people want to know, well, where do I go to find a bill? How do I read a bill? How do I track a bill? How do I find out who authored the bill? And how do I find out where it is in the process? All of that can be found here and a number of other things like what time the House or the Senate convenes, what's on the calendar to be brought to the floor on any particular day, who's on what committees. All of that information can be found here. So let's start with the homepage. So on this homepage, you see a quick number search. So if you know the bill number, you know the session, let's say 2022 legislative session, we'll start there since that's the current session. We'll determine which type of bill is it. This is House bill, of course, Senate bill, and then you have a number of different options. So we'll say House bill. Obviously, nothing's likely going to pop up because, like I said, we just started session on last week. So we'll just say House Bill 25, retrieve measure. Once you click retrieve measure, it'll take you to that particular link. I'm going to share that with you so you can see what that looks like as well. So if I click retrieve, it'll take me to this screen here, which is an important screen to understand. This is a PDF. This is the version of a bill. So actually, House Bill 25 has been filed, and it is property of the House. So bill text for all visitors is what you'll find first. This is as it was introduced. So this is the way it was turned over to the House. So you have a PDF version, and then you have basically just a notepad version, a text version, and then you have a strike all or strike through version, which will tell you what changed in the measure. So I'll kind of show you that one because a lot of people like to see this version over the others. So as you can see, this version has the language that is proposed to be taken out of a measure. These underlined words or anything that you see underlined means that this language is new language. Anything obviously with stars meaning something was deleted. And so what I want to do is show you the difference. So just kind of take a mental screenshot of this. You see the three asterisks here, and then you have the language that has a strike through on it. So let's take a look at the PDF version of this same bill. So remember, it's in the first paragraph. So you see, there's no language that has a strike through on it. You just see the stars that indicate that something was here that is no longer here. It's been deleted text, and then you can go through that strike through version to see what text was deleted. So that's an important part of reading a bill in the Mississippi legislature is understanding those things. So underlying language is new language that's been proposed for the measure, and then language that are where you see it asterisks, those mean that the language has been deleted, and you can always find that language in the strike through versions. Down here tells you the bill number. It tells you the session year, which is 22. And then it tells you who wrote the measure. So these are just attorneys' initials. And you'll see that information all the way through as far as underlined and deleted text. And then section 2, which is traditionally the very last section of a measure, tells you the enactment of this particular bill. And feel free to comment any questions that you may have or any thing that you need help with finding on the legislature.ms.gov site. We'll be happy to go over that. So let's go back to the home page. As I stated earlier, you can always find different things, House resolutions, because these are all different. So if you're looking for a House resolution or a House concurrent resolution, if you put House bill and put the number, it's going to pull up an error message because there's no such measure, or it's going to pull up the wrong measure. So keep that in mind. These are upcoming meetings for the House and the Senate, any live streams, which I was talking about on the jeremyanderson.com website. You can find these committee meetings here as well, which is very helpful if you're interested in viewing a committee meeting live. Not all committee meetings are actually streamed live, but several of them are, especially now with some of the restrictions that we have. So you just kind of have to figure out if your meeting or a meeting that you're interested in is being streamed live. Underneath here is just COVID information updates for the Capitol. So if you plan to visit the Capitol anytime soon, please make sure you familiarize yourself with some of these or call the Capitol ahead of time to get some information on some of the COVID updates and restrictions. Topics of interest, which is very important. This is actually a new part to the site. This kind of shows any important updates for these issues that we know have been circulating around the state of interest. So you can click those and kind of get updates on those. And then down here are just action items. This is the Mississippi State Capitol site. You can learn more about the Capitol itself. If you don't want to do an in-person tour, this might be a good option for you. And then, of course, the Lieutenant Governor has a page that you can always link out to his website. And then the House Speaker is Philip Gunn. And then if you're looking for a particular code or section of a code, you can always come here and search for a measure or a code in a measure to find out what that code actually reads. And then underneath, you have some quick little links down here. So let's go into legislators. So this is where you'll find your representatives, your senators. Uh, this is a House roster. You kind of do either or. This is more of a PDF form, and then your representatives and senators are more interactive. And then you have the House standing meetings, House Senate standing meetings. These are just meetings that are traditionally scheduled at the same time, the same day in the same room. Just because you see a standing meeting here doesn't mean it's going to actually happen. Sometimes you have to kind of watch session. The chair may say, "Hey, I don't want to meet on this day," or judiciary meeting has been standing meeting has been canceled and moved to this day. So if you're interested in a particular committee, please make sure that you kind of follow session on any particular day or day before that you think that meeting is going to happen to make sure it is still going to happen. The House Conference Committee rooms, these are just kind of the same thing. And then the gallery. So you can kind of look through some of that to get a better understanding of what all of those do. But I do want to click on representatives to kind of give you a show of what that looks like. So of course you have the Speaker of the House, Representative Philip Gunn up here, and then the Speaker Pro Tem, which is Representative Jason White. And then we'll just click my name. So you do have a bio of each legislator. It tells you their name. I have my website here. Some people do, some people don't. Then it tells you their district and the county that they represent. Keeping in mind, this is the county, not the city. And then their party affiliation. Democrats are going to be in blue. Republicans are going to be in red. Also keeping in mind that the Mississippi legislature, it has a super majority Republican. So keep that in mind as you're kind of going through the site. Legislative experience, it just tells you their first session, and of course to present, and then education, occupation, and then the committee memberships that they're on. So as you can see, I'm on quite a bit of committees that are particularly important. Judiciary B handles, a lot of people ask that question. Judiciary B handles criminal law, and then Judiciary A handles a lot of civil law. And then you have the contact information, Capitol Home. Some people list their home number, some people don't. But you can more than likely contact your lawmaker using any of these methods. The House email actually isn't the best way to contact your lawmaker. If you can find another way to contact them via email, that might be better. We get a lot of emails, as you can imagine, on this domain. But it might not be a bad idea to CC your lawmaker using their official government email just in case. And then you have a short little blurb here about the representative or about the senator. If I'm not mistaken, the Senate page looks very similar to this. And you can have that same process for every lawmaker that's on here. Like I said, the Senate is pretty much the same. So let's go into legislation. So as I mentioned before, on the homepage, you have where you can do a quick search if you know the bill number or the type of measure that it is. You can also come to the measure search, and it's a similar process. It looks a little different, but it's a similar process. There is a different option here. As you can recall, on the homepage, there wasn't an option to enter a code section. So let's say you're looking for, which has happened actually in our office. We've had people reach out to us about a measure maybe that we've drafted that died in the process. We can always amend a bill as long as that code section is still alive in the process, which means the code section or a bill with the code section hasn't died or it has passed in the other chamber or in our chamber that can be amended. So a lot of times people will ask about that, and we ask the particular code of interest that they're looking for. So we'll go in here, or you can go in here and type the code section that you're looking for and find a measure, and you can pull up what bill it is that still has that code section and if that measure is still alive. So then if you find a measure that's still alive, you can reach out and say, hey, this code section is still alive in House Bill or Senate Bill X, Y, and Z. Would you mind offering this amendment because the bill is still alive? And so that's a good way to kind of backdoor to legislation that may have died in the process that you feel adamant about and want to see passed. The next is daily action report. This kind of lags behind a little bit, but this just kind of gives you an overview of what transpired on any given day. So let's click the fifth. So if we go into here, this is basically a snapshot of what happened in the chambers. This is both the House and the Senate. So as you can see, this tells you who all in the House was present on the 5th of January, and then you see the same in the Senate. Then this gives you kind of a snapshot of what measures were introduced on that day in the House, and then the same down at the bottom in the Senate, which there were no measures introduced in the Senate. But then you have House committee reports, which we took up congressional redistricting as well. So that's why you see that here. And then over here, it tells you what lawmaker introduced the measure. And then if you click on that, it'll tell you co-authors and kind of some more information on the measure, which we'll get into very shortly. You have the same thing, same options for both the House and the Senate. If you were searching a measure by a particular member of the legislature, we'll stay in the House. So we'll say measures by House author. If you click that, it'll bring up that similar list where you can click what measures were introduced by a lawmaker. So we'll say Representative Clark, Brian Clark. So you see, these are the measures that he's introduced this year or that he's co-authored. So you can always toggle principal author only. So this will show all the measures that he is the principal author on. And then you can toggle back off to show all the measures, basically, whether he is the author or the co-author on a particular piece of legislation. And like I said, feel free to comment any questions in your preferred social media platform if you have any specific questions on how-tos. The next thing I want to go over is measures by House committee. So if you're hearing about a measure that is before the legislature or possibly will be before the legislature, you can always come to the measure search here to go to the committee that you feel it may have gone to. So let's look at education. So let's say you have a measure that you're hearing about, whether it's teacher pay raise or anything like that. You would specifically try the House Education Committee. The Senate has an Education Committee as well. You try here just because there's a larger number of members in the House. So you kind of sort through the measure. You can always do a control find or control F to find keywords in the list so that you don't have to sort through this long list. Keeping in mind that this is only the 10th day of this, well, actually the 6th day of the session. So as you can see, this list in just education is quite long for us to have only been in session for 4 days. So just imagine what this list will look like by the 21st, if I'm not mistaken. So this might be a good starting point for you to kind of look through a measure. So let's say you are going through a measure and you find the measure that you're looking for. So clicking on the number takes you to the actual bill, which will be similar to what we saw before. This is just going to be the PDF version, not the strike through version, just the PDF version. So if you click on the actual process in which the bill is in, so let's start here. We'll click refer to the House Education Committee. So let's talk about this screen a little bit more. So we talked about what these three icons meant here. The description, this is called a short title. This is a short title, and then the title here would kind of give you more details on what this measure is actually attempting to do. Fiscal note, this will, if there is such a note, it will be attached here, and it'll let you know that one is required. Then you have the background information. This tells you whether the bill is active or if it has died, and if it's died, and where in the process did it die. Sometimes you'll see died in committee. Sometimes you'll see just dead. So you just kind of have to kind of look out for that. Then you have the deadline here, which we'll talk about in just a moment so that you can stay on top of when deadlines are. And then if this is a revenue bill, which we'll talk about more on the calendar, revenue bills are subject to a different deadline than general bills and constitutional amendments. And then the vote type required, this is a majority vote, which is just majority of the House has to vote in favor of it in order for it to pass. You'll have 2/3, you have 3/5, and that you'll see that here. And then effective date tells you when this should this bill pass, when does it go into effect? And that will be listed there. This is where you'll find history of actions. We'll go to a previous bill so that you can see a full list of what a full list will look like once it's traveled through the process. But right now, this just tells you that on January 4th, which was the first day of session, this measure was referred to the Education Committee. It was introduced and referred to education. This tells you the code section. So if you think back to the code section search that we were talking about, these are the numbers that you would need in order to pull that. So if I click on this, it takes me to any measure that has this particular code section in it, which again is very important if you are looking um, to offer for a lawmaker to offer an amendment to a measure on your behalf. This tells you the House committee, what committee this was assigned to. Oftentimes, you'll see measures double referred, and we've even seen recently triple referred. 9 times out of 10, measures that are double referred will not pass. Measures that are triple referred definitely will not pass. And here's why. So it takes a lot to get a bill out of committee in general, just with one committee. So let's say we have education, and then we have, we'll just say workforce development. Well, that bill has to go through education committee, so that you have to then convince the chair of education to take up the measure. The education committee in the House has to pass the measure, and then then it's transferred to whatever the next committee is. So workforce development. The workforce development chair then has to also take up this measure and have it passed in his or her committee, and then it comes to the floor. So keeping in mind, not only do you have to go through these two processes, but you're also up against the House deadline or deadlines to get it to the floor and pass off the floor and transmit it to the Senate. Then you have principal author, which just tells you who the main author of this measure is. So again, these are links. So if you click this, it'll take you to that particular lawmaker's list of bills that he or she has authored, so that you can kind of get a feel of where that lawmaker sits on specific issues. And then you can go to their bio. Let's say you don't know much about an author of a measure, but you have a bill that they've authored that you want to support or want to help support. You can always click their bio and again reach out to them and contact them to see how you can be of assistance. And then of course you have the title here. Down here just tells you when this bill last had action on it. And keep in mind that that's going to sometimes lag behind. But that just kind of gives you an update of where the measure when the measure was updated. All right, still in legislation, all measures not dead. This is an option that you could use if you're just looking for. Let's say we're halfway through session and you're looking through or looking for all the measures that are still alive in the legislature. You can click this and it will just basically give you a bulk report of all of the measures that are still pending before either chamber, which means these measures can still can become law. Previous sessions, this is kind of what I was talking about. If you're looking for a measure that was passed last session, so we'll click 2021, and this screen should look relatively familiar in a different form, but the options are still the same. So let's say we're going through a measure authored by a House author. You'd see that same thing. You'll click there and it'll open up for any measure that may have been passed or died in the legislature by a House member in that particular year. You can also look at the legislative calendar, the weekly summaries, and all of that as you go through this process. As you can see, you have several different options to choose from. You have extraordinary sessions that have happened over time and all the way up to the current year, which you find at the top there. Again, if you have any specific questions, feel free to offer those questions in the comments. House weekly summaries can be helpful if you've missed a session throughout the week, or if you heard of a measure that you might be interested in. You can always come to weekly summaries and figure out what happened that week in the House. This previous session text search is similar as well. The difference between that and this previous sessions, if you know keywords of the measure that you're looking for, you can always enter that here in this text field by searching for a particular year and then entering the word for a query that will be built, and it'll pull up basically all of the information that you're looking for. And keeping in mind, you have the same options here, whether it is a House bill or concurrent resolution or general resolution. Appointments for Senate committees, confirmations. The House does not have confirmation power, that lies in the Senate. So if you have a particular interest of anybody that the governor have appointed or is considering appointing to a particular post, the Senate will have final confirmation powers over that appointment, and you can find that here, as well as searching through the general search at on the home page. So that's basically it for legislation. House committees. This is just a list of who's on what committee. So it's just kind of alphabetized on the certain committees that we have. As you can see, the House have quite a few. And then you can see who the chair of the committee is and who the vice chair of the committee is, and then all of the members on a particular committee. That is the same as the Senate. The calendars and schedule, the difference between the calendar and the schedule. So the calendar is basically what we get every day that shows us what's pending before the House. So if you are tracking a bill and you want to know when it's going to be before the House, you can come here and it can kind of give you an idea of when that might be. Just because a bill is number one, it doesn't mean that it's going to be taken up on that day. Chairman or chairwomen can always pass over a measure and move it to the heel of the calendar, which means moving it to the end of the calendar, or they can table the measure, or they can send it back to the committee. So there's a lot of options, but this just at least gives you an idea of where the measure is after it's passed out of a particular committee. And then the House schedule gives you a schedule of what's happening in the House. So all of the committee meetings, as you can see, appropriations have a lot of committee meetings tomorrow, and then the House convenes at 2 p.m. Today we convened at 4, which is standard on Mondays, and then the early parts of session, the early parts of the week on session, we convene at 2 until we kind of get past committee meetings and start doing a lot of floor action. So this kind of gives you an overview of what's moving or what committees are moving in the House. The Senate has the exact same thing. General information, I think, is important for several reasons. One being this legislative deadline. This is kind of what we were talking about earlier. This gives you an overview of the session and what is expected to be complete on any given day. So keep in mind, these can always change through concurrent resolutions that are passed between the House and the Senate if we need to suspend the rules for the purpose of extending the deadline or something like that. But all of these gives you an idea of when things are to be complete. So the deadline for introducing general bills is on the 17th. So after that day, no introductions of general bills can be made unless the rules are suspended. And then, of course, you have different floor action deadlines, reconsideration deadlines, and this is a 90-day session. So that kind of gives you some information on that process. Another thing that I think is really important are House rules, Senate rules, and joint rules. The House and the Senate operate on two totally different sets of rules that are adopted at the beginning of a new 4-year term by each chamber. And of course, these rules can be amended throughout session through resolutions. And so these are very important. And then joint rules, anytime you have a joint committee that comes together, though they operate under the joint rules because it's both the House and the Senate meeting. And then you have constitutional provisions, peer, and then a bunch of other different options. I think this is really important, how a bill becomes law. This is just kind of a PDF of how the process works. So if you ever get confused on how a bill travels through the process, you can always go back through that, which is a really neat guide to help you understand the process a little better. About the Capitol, this just gives you information about the Capitol in general, internship programs, virtual tours, if you're interested in that versus coming on site for a tour. And then the history of the Capitol, holidays, parking if you do decide to come to the Capitol, and then activities if you have a young person that wants to kind of be educated on some of the workings of the Capitol. And then, of course, the webcast. This is where you go to find live streams of the House and the Senate. And then, if you're just looking for the general legislature website, YouTube channel, you can always click that and it'll take you directly to that. That's pretty much the legislature.gov site. I hope that everybody had a good time with understanding this process. And um, if you have any questions after the fact, you can always reach out to us if you run into a problem going through the site or going through our Jeremy Anderson .com site, and we'll be happy to help you. In the meantime, if you do have any issues, constituent concerns, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. We would be more than happy to serve you. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Good night.